Now that we have the curtain walls surrounding the structure, we can begin to add some detail to the wall section. So I'm going to go to the steel wall section, and I'll start to add some content to this part at the top where the roof and the curtain wall terminate. So we have a pitched roof. It's a 1/4 inch per foot. It's a flat roof with a slight pitch rather. And what we need to do is add a coping at the top and sort of provide a kind of a barrier to the environment in terms of water and passage of heat through this part of the building. So I'm going to start by making a change, and perhaps your file already has this, but I noticed that my decking is running the wrong direction. So if I click on this and I edit the boundary, I can go up to the upper level, level 3 here, and make this change. So I'm just going to change the span direction so that it runs north-south. Click on the check mark. I'll go back to my section, and you can see now that the decking is running the correct direction. I believe I have the same condition here, so I'm going to click on this one and repeat the process. I'll go to level 2 and change the span direction. Okay, so these are standard joists, and one thing that happens is they're designed so that they sort of sit, their end is sort of centered on the structure. But I have this deck here, and it would need some additional support coming all the way out to the edge. So what I'm going to do is create a region and then generate some line work on top of it. When we talk about these open web joists, the webbing is made up typically of bars or channels. In this case, these are bars or rods, as it's noted here when I hover over it. And we have a top cord and a bottom cord. So what I'm going to be drawing is an extension to the top cord. So I'm going to go to Annotate and Region, and I'm going to, let's see here, I want this to be solid white so it can cover some of the line work here. And all I really need to do is cover this part right here. So I will just make a rectangle here. Now, I don't want those to be medium lines, so let's repeat that. Quitting cannot be undone. Yes, I'm going to start over. Annotate, Region, and I'm going to make them mostly out of thin lines here. Oops, let's do this as a rectangle. It'll be faster. From here to here. And then I'm going to select lines and make them invisible. And I probably should just extend this over. Move it from here to here with the check mark. Okay, so now all I got to do is, I really don't need it to be the full height there. This cord, this bottom part of the cord can stay as it is. So this is what I want to do with my region. And then to finish this out, I'm just going to create a line here, but I'm going to change it to thin lines before I do that. Okay. All right, there's my extended top cord to pick up the load of that edge of the metal deck. And the next thing I'm going to do is create a very short, it's not really a wall, but a vertical plane here that will basically be the structure of this coping. So in order to do that, I'm going to construct it out of light gauge framing. And I don't have any in the file yet, I think. Let me double check, annotate components, and I have metal studs, but you can see they have that little curl in there, so they're not really useful for runners. I think I need to bring them in. So let's see here. Let's go to insert, load Autodesk family, and I'm going to type in here runner, interior metal runner, J runner, runner channels. Let's use this one here. I'm not sure if there's a significant difference between these. For the purposes of our detail, we would call these out with notations anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and add that, and let's just see what these dimensions are. Okay, let's do this one, the RC6 3/16, and click on OK. Now when I go to annotate and component, let's see if they came into the file. Let me try again. Okay, so you should find them under channel stud section 6 inches. That's the one that I want to use. Not this one. This is a vertical stud that would fit into the runner. So we wouldn't see that from this particular view. So I'm going to take that runner and I'm going to move it down. Before I do that, let's see here. We can make this work. We have the rigid insulation of the roof decking that's kind of running in this zone where we're going to have this little wall. So I want to create a region there to mask that out. So I'm going to go to annotate region. I'm going to use my filled region solid white, and this time let's do this with invisible lines, and I'll click here. Oops, let's do this as a rectangle here. And it can come up a little higher. We just have to, we may need to make sure that it's behind other things. Okay, so there's my runner down there, and then I've got that region. I'm going to take this runner and I'm going to mirror it. Now I want this runner to be a little bit higher than the top of my mullion. So let's see, it's measuring from, let's make a guideline so we can kind of have a better sense of where it's located. Oops. Okay. Make a new one. Guideline from here over. Click on it, and I'm going to move it up 18 inches. Okay, that's where the top of the mullion is, based on what we had drawn for the curtain wall, and I'm going to move it up another 1/2 inch. Okay, and then extend it over, and then I'm going to put this, I'm going to move it from here up to that new line that I made. And I'll get rid of the line. Okay, now I have a line that I can work with here, but I need to finish this off. Put this here, and I'll draw another detail line from here up to the runner. Okay, so this would, in between these two runners, we would have a series of those stud sections that I had erased the one. We don't see those from this view. And I'm also going to add some insulation. So under the annotate ribbon here, let's change this to 5.5 inches and fill that with some insulation. All right, now I'm going to also bring in a coping. So I think the copings that we have for the other details are not going to work for this one. I'm going to go back to insert, load Autodesk family, and up here I will type in coping. And we'll go with this coping section. Now we used, for our masonry structure, we used something that looks more like this one. This would be more typical for something with a curtain wall. But it could also be used for a masonry building as well. Okay, so now I go to annotate component, and there's a coping section. Now this one is pretty small in terms of its width. Looks like a few others came in. There's a 12-inch one, which is a little bit better for us, but we actually need one that's even wider. So I'm going to have to customize the coping section. I'm going to duplicate it. And instead of 12, let's make this 16. And then I can make this Y and okay. Okay, so now we have this coping, and the idea would be to let it overlap the mullion a little bit. And then we need to put something in here that can be used for this to bear on. Okay, so I'm going to use a wood member to sort of serve as the base for this. But I also want to add something along this. So right now, this framed wall of light gauge metal framing is open. So I want to kind of close that up, and I'm just going to draw what would be the graphic for a plywood in there. Now I made this region back here, but I probably need it to be a little bit deeper or wider. So I may need to modify this a little bit. That was my region. I've selected it, and I'm going to change this from 2 inches to 2.75 inches. Oops, it just moved it over. I'll just pull this over to here then. Okay, now here, I'm going to copy this over 0.75 inches. So now we have a piece of plywood that will be closing up that. Okay, now plywood, the graphic for it is typically a series of lines like what I'm drawing right now, 0.25 inches. And then the other thing that we do with this is draw a few diagonal lines. So I'll just make one here, 45, and I will copy this one up, let's say 0.375 inches. Something like, looks like that. Okay. And then, oops, I can control, hold the control down so I pick both of them, and then add a few more of these little graphic symbols. Okay, and I will do a similar detail up here with some plywood. So I'm going to make one that goes as far over as the mullion. Then I'm going to click on this line and make copies of it. 0.25 inches, 0.25 inches. 0.25 inches. All right, but this is going to go over to a line here. And again, with my graphic symbol here of for the plywood, copy and just make some consistent spacing, whatever you used. Be at least 2, but you could add 3 also. Okay, so what else do we need to add? We are going to have our cant, so that we'll have our membrane that wraps up and underneath this coping. I'm going to start off by drawing a circle from here, and I'll make it maybe 6 inches. And then I will create a region in this zone right here. Region, in this one, I'm going to make using the rigid insulation, and I will go from this intersection here to here. Oops, it came in a little far. Make this correction. It doesn't have to be perfect. This one I'm going to make invisible. This one, let's do this one as a thin line. Mark. Delete the circle. Okay, now here, looks like I'm going to have to edit this a little bit and bring it down. So it covers the line, put the check mark. Okay. So from one of the other details, we have some lines that we can use as a guide for this, but basically the idea is that the membrane comes along, goes up and under here, and there may be a separate flashing piece that comes over the top of that, or the membrane may just wrap all the way around. So I'm going to check the other detail to get the same line weight and line type that I used for the other instances. All right, so I'm ready to draw my lines here under annotate, detail line. This one will be a medium line. I want it to be relatively heavy. And it's going to go from here till, somewhere over here. It can go a little bit longer. You may have to adjust your window later anyways. And I'm going to offset it. This one. 0.25 inches. So let's do this again. Some extra lines there. I'm going to erase the line I started with. I think that's not far enough. Let's offset again. And delete these. So I end up with a line that's maybe 1/2 inch above there. And I'll do another one here, annotate detail line. I'm going to use the offset tool. This time, let's make this 0.5 in the beginning. And then we can pull these together. Let's go up from here. I'm not going to do the offset again. I just need to visually make sure that there's a little bit of space in there so everything reads well. Okay, now I'm going to undo this one, and I'm going to make a little change here. Now, in order to get this pitch, at the right angle, sometimes we'll put in there a piece of lumber that has an angle to it. So I'm going to draw something that sort of approximates that. These should be drawn with light lines, thin lines. Here, go up 0.75 inches about, come up a little higher, so it's just underneath there, and then bring it down. And often what's used to indicate piece of lumber like I'm just described would be an X across, as if you were drawing a wood frame sort of member. Okay, now I need a little bit more room here. I'm going to move this up a little bit so I have some space to bring this medium membrane line. And I'm going to make another line here. And join this one. Right now, there might be another like shim that's happening here, and technically this this profile is an intermediate one. You may recall when I brought in this profile, I just assigned it to the interior ones and the ones on the perimeter. There would be some sort of fitting in here that would block this. And we're going to leave this as it is. We will be changing this graphic. Hopefully we can find the line work in here to make this not so heavy. But as I mentioned, there may be some kind of shim piece in here. Let's make this a thin line. And I'll make a line like so. Okay, so I'm going to erase this one. That should do it for this upper part. And we can move on to some of the other details. So as I mentioned, for these spandrel panels, and I'm going to go back to the detail that I showed you previously. Anywhere we have the spandrel panel, we will add something that looks like what you see here, a rigid insulation that's, maybe a couple of inches thick, and we'll put that at every spandrel panel. Let's go back to our Revit file here. I'm going to go to annotate region, and this time we'll do a rigid insulation. This one will have light or thin lines. And let's do this as a rectangle to save a little bit of time. Let's see if I on that, how wide is that? Let's check a dimension here. 1, 2, 1 7/8. Let's move it over 0.125 inches so that it is roughly 2 inches in thickness. And of course, you would work this out with the manufacturer of the window if you were doing this. I'm going to copy it here and move it into place. Okay, we also have very small spandrel at the bottom. So click on that, copy, bring that down.